Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country, around the world, and especially in the universe of creativity, of innovation, of philanthropy, and all things succession. I cannot miss noting that. I am very happy to bring you a friend, an innovator, a creative voice, an important voice for these times, somebody I've been eager to talk to and have on this show. Finally joining us, the great and powerful Arian Moayed is here to join us on Independent Americans. Welcome, Arian.
Thank you, Paul. Holy shit, this is amazing. First of all, I gotta say, that is the nicest intro I've ever heard. So I appreciate that.
It's deserved, although I do think I kind of fucked up your last name, Moayed.
Yeah, you did it. There you go.
I did it, right? Because we just started talking about your last name and how I think I got it, and how often people must screw it up. Because my friend's name is Mohammed Al-Mumayed, and then that got in my head, and so Al-Mumayez, and then I got to Moayed, and then it got mixed up in my bash brain.
If you think that's the worst that people have called me, you're wrong.
I want to get into all of it. I want to talk, obviously, about Succession. The first episode was blockbuster. I want to talk about Waterwell. I want to talk about your amazing story. And our friendship has evolved over these last couple of years. And so the first question I want to ask you, it's been a wild year and a half. I haven't seen you in person in over probably 2 years. Where are you, Arian, and how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm in Manhattan right now. I am doing well. I have 2 daughters that are in school, but COVID has still not gone away. So there was a close contact, so one of the daughters is at home. So it's kind of like trying to figure out and maneuver this new world and trying to think just when you think it's like done, all of a sudden they just bring you back. So, but I'm good. I'm really blessed and lucky to be alive and healthy and surrounded by family and talking to amazing people like yourself.
I wanted to ask you about this later, but I think it's maybe one of the most important issues in America that we don't talk about, which is the challenges of parenting right now. And so many of us are stressed, beat up, trying to stay focused. And it's been my most important mission and focus. People ask, hey, how's your business? How's this? I'm like, I'm focused on my boys and my wife, obviously. But any insights or lessons learned for you as a dad during all this?
Yeah, this last year and a half has been challenging for all of us. We've all had some ups and downs. So much of our last year was contingent on my amazing nephew boy, this lovely boy by the name of Will, who passed away to cancer on June 2nd of 2020. And so our experience of COVID is also linked with the passing of this amazing, human being. And so it's tricky because I'm a really honest person. And so when I'm in doubt or when I have self-doubt or when I don't know the answers to things, which is often, I tell my daughters that. I just tell them that, I just say that I'm also scared. Like, I also don't know how this is going to go. And that is only more prevalent and more true during this crazy last year, because I think we don't know what's going to happen. We still don't know what's going to happen. We have a lot of, variables out there. And so I feel that placating them and just telling them it's all going to be okay will sometimes not be the answer. And so this last year, it's not that I'm like, life is hard, get it together, but it is a little bit of like, I don't know the answer to that. And the pandemic has really kind of like spotlighted how important it is to be that kind of transparent.
How much of that is shaped by your journey as a child? You were 5 years old when you came from Iran and landed in Chicago. And I just linked you up with my friend Rossi, who you didn't know, but I mentioned he was on the show. An amazing guest. People remember Mazda Rossi. Guest. But he similarly came to Chicago from Iran as a child. I don't know if it was within years of each other, but you went through a lot as a child. And what do you take from that in the way it sounds like honesty is really important in the way you talk to your children, but how did that tough experience shape the way you approach this tough experience with your kids now?
It's it's so linked, Paul. It's so next to each other. It's so part of the DNA. We came post-revolution, and the people that came post-revolution, the vast majority of them were escaping, because when the shit was hitting the fan pre-revolution, if you had the funds, you would have gone. You would have left. We were not in that spot. We came to this country. We're a family of 6. My mother was married to my father at the age of 13, had 3 kids at 15, 16, and 18, and had me at 35. Right when the war was happening with Iraq, and right when the revolution happened. That's where the baby boom in Iran is at. 60% of the Iranian population is under the age of 41. I'm 41. And so, and then we came to this country with, and my mom never even graduated middle school, I don't think. So all of a sudden thrown into this world with very little English skills, and very little means. And also, Iran, America at the time, as not that it's much better any better at all, but was very was very chaotic in the 80s. And so also trying to not be Iranian was a part of my DNA. Don't tell anyone, or Americanize yourself more. You don't want, because there was just pure fear. And also a family unit of 6, and basically a middle-class Iranian culture, with family and friends and language and grocery stores and just a regular life, has now turned into a family of 3, because one brother is here and another brother is here, and my sister's back in Iran. And so all of a sudden, you can imagine, for my parents, 6 turns into 3, and then my dad was trying to make ends meet, so it turned into 2. So, those obstacles are what I am today. Oftentimes, Paul, people ask me, and maybe they ask you this as well, I would be surprised if they don't, how do you get so many projects done, or how are you in so many circles? And you know what I mean? You get that a lot. And my response to that is, none of that seems as hard as being an immigrant. It isn't. It honestly isn't. I would not want to relive those days, because they just were really chaotic and crazy and messy. And, anyway, so I think so. To the long answer to your very simple question was that all of it is defined by that. I find myself in a exterior shell of an American, but with the interior shell of a Persian Iranian man for generations, and that is kind of what defines me.
It oozes out of your being and everything you do, from the work to being your friend, and I know that experience was so formative for my grandparents, who came here and spoke no English. My grandfather was, I think, 17. My grandmother was 14. She was 14 years old, didn't speak English, came here on a boat by herself, mind-blowing shit that I can't even relate to. So I know that your children are lucky to have that grounding in your immigration story, and I can feel that, coming out of everything you do. The last time I saw you in person, we were trying to piece this back together, was, I think, the last time my wife and I went to a real public event. We went to the Waterwell production of The Courtroom.
Yes.
It was, a fantastic play that you did right before everything shut down. I remember being in a seat and kind of hearing sniffles and sneezes and being should we be here? Seeing you afterward, and seeing you afterward at a bar, and for the reception, the cast party, do we shake hands? What do we do? And then I think a couple weeks before that, you came to one of my last live recordings with Susan Rice.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that feels like 10 years ago, but it was only in February or March of 2020.
And since then, you're on a launch pad, man. And I think it's been exciting to watch, because from the moment I met you, I've been rooting for you. And I think you reached out to me because of Waterwell.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so can you explain for folks that maybe don't know, because I think it's such an important part of your story, one of the many projects you're doing. You also don't sleep. You know, I've read an interview where you say you sleep 4 or 5 hours a day. That's part of how I get so much shit done too.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But can you talk about Waterwell? What it is, why you
Yeah.
started it, what you want it to do?
Yeah, Tom Ridgely and I co-founded this nonprofit art and education company called Waterwell that since 2002 has been doing civic-minded, socially conscious work in both the artistic field and in the education field. Currently, we're almost 20 years. That sounds insane to say out loud, but we're almost 20 years old. And I am the board chair, and we are run by the company is run by three amazing leaders, Lise Sunday Evans, Adam Frank, and Heather Lanza. And we have a two-pronged, essentially, company that does civics, civic engagement, real civic engagement, and has been doing it for 20 years, alongside art and education. And so, for example, on the education side, we have we work alongside the Professional Performing Arts School. We're inside the curriculum. We have 250 students. We give them our artist as citizen training and world-class art training at the same time. On the artistic side, we do shows like The Courtroom. A courtroom is a reenactment of one woman's deportation case, and a deportation case about voting. Again, all of these things are in the zeitgeist now, but when we were finding this piece and cobbling it together, we were just trying to find the truth. And so we took these transcripts, we did not write a single word, and we performed them in non-theatrical spaces and venues. So we mostly did them in courtrooms, but we also did them in event spaces and civic centers and whatnot. And the show had a life of its own because so much of what Waterwell does on the production side of things is less interested in being in the theatrical community, though we're heavily involved in the theatrical community, is about going after the communities that we work alongside. So, and for The Courtroom, we would go to basically any immigration right activist out there, or any immigration judge out there. We would talk deeply with Jeff Chase and Richard Haynes, who's the lawyer in the case, and Ashley Tabador, and who's a former immigration judge president of the union. And so we would just talk to them and see what they would do and what they needed from us. And so much of that is what Waterwell's been doing for 20 years. What's crazy, Paul, is that the first 10 years, kind of nobody gave a shit. They were just kind of like, oh, they really do amazing, powerful events, and we love what they're doing, but like it's not in the form of how we view theater or how we do arts education. And now all of a sudden, you know, the game has changed, and we're in a lucky space to be there. But why we spoke is because in 2005, I think it was 2005, we were doing a lot of shows and we were trying to write grants, and we were also, you know, responding to the world at hand. And we were in the midst of a war that was obviously started by dubious reasons. And we all knew that, but we also are bridge builders from 2002. So we also know not to ostracize people and try to bring people together in the same room. And so one of the biggest things for us that we were reading every day in the news is all the amount of these amazing, heroic men and women that were over there that are dying or being with lots of post-traumatic stress and coming back, you know, with so many different, tragedies that might have happened to their physical bodies even. And we thought they weren't being taken care of enough. And we didn't know what to do. I mean, we can't give them books, and we can't give them, health care, or but what we can do is entertain. And so one of our first grants that we got, true story, is to make all of our shows free for military folks and high school students. And that became the beginning, this is 2005, 2006, the beginning of a conversation with so many military folks, because to us, as Americans and proud Americans, we really wanted to make sure that we are taking care of our own. And honestly, we can talk about that forever. And so that's kind of how you and I kind of started talking. Jump to another Waterwell show that we did years, maybe in 2017, right after Trump, right before the inauguration. We found an old World War II commissioned war play called the Blueprint Specials, that a young Frank Lesser, who went on to write On the Town, was commissioned to write these musicals so that servicemen that were fighting in World War II on their off time could put together a musical to give them a little bit of relief from the shock that they just went through. So the War Department thought that art therapy was the best solution for these servicemen and women. These plays were lost for 70 years. Waterwell found them, performed them on the Intrepid in Midtown Manhattan, and did it with a cast of Broadway stars and veterans. And we actually, for the first time, did the thing that the War Department back in the day wanted to do. So that's the kind of work that we do.
I love it. You're doing big things. And I kind of, if I had to like way oversimplify it, it's almost like a USO for everyone, but with a real social impact focus. Right. Yeah. And almost a more important message in my view, because you're taking on the issues that are most relevant to the national conversation, and you're opening it up to students and other types of people that maybe don't have access
to talk
or
it
haven't.
Through.
Yeah.
And I was just going to jump in real quick and just say, oftentimes for Blueprint Specials, for example, or Fleet Week Follies, someone asked in an interview is like, well, what are you trying to say? Like, what are you trying to say? And it's like, this is what I'm trying to say. You saw it.
Yeah.
That we work together and make fucking awesome art.
Or like now that I'm a teacher, okay, now that I'm a professor, I'm really embracing the Socratic method. So what do you think we're trying to say?
Yeah.
What do you hear that we're trying to say? Right. Exactly. So every question is responded to with a question. But to that point, Arian, like I remember the courtroom. It was so relevant at the time, given the immigration debate, the voting rights debate, all of it. And it was powerful. It was important. It's the kind of stuff that people need to see and hear now more than ever. And on this parallel track, your star is continuing to rise, right? Crazy. And throughout the pandemic, this intersection of what's happening in the world and your career is continuing to happen in a way that I'm kind of proud of this part of our show where we've been pulling out folks who are at the intersection of entertainment and art and politics and activism. And we've had, some folks that are rising stars that maybe you heard them on this show a year or two ago and now they're blowing up, right? And I look at your moment in a similar way. And Succession is everything right now, right? Yeah. Succession was what got a lot of people through the pandemic, but it also stopped right before the pandemic. Yeah. It kind of left us all hanging. Now you're back with this blast that I think is so good and important. I've talked a bit about the show. I think it's one of the best shows I've ever seen. And I think what really, the power dynamics, the strategy, the internal struggles, the family dynamics, so many things that we talk about on this show, and the underlying political and social components of everything. But also something I wanted to pull out, dialogue that is so good in its writing, but also in its performance. People used to talk about Quentin Tarantino movies all the time about dialogue, and I watched some Quentin Tarantino stuff this weekend, and it kind of shaped going into Succession. And I don't mean that if it's an unfair comparison.
No, I know exactly what you mean. The language is
it's so fucking good. The lines like that you all deliver,
but it's also like blunt and fucking like
it's just so good. And the humor, especially, like the jabs and the nasty snarks and all the one-liners, right? It's like it's such a great. Every trailer is so good because there's so many amazing lines of dialogue. But can I ask you, what do you think is most important about this show? Why is this show resonating with people? Why are people so excited about this show right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fucking great question. I mean, I think the reason is because one of the big dilemmas that we are going to have to face as human beings is that we are turning back the clock and turning back into the monopolistic society of the Rockefellers, the Carnegies and all those folks. That's back, and it's now on blast. And so we have a real serious class divide that is turning into also a media divide in a weird way. And so in a way, I think watching these 0.000%, 1% folks behave in the way that they do is giving us a little bit of a peek of what society is actually happening on above us. I often say we're basically all of us are run by like 10 white male dudes. The whole world is like 10 white men are like running the world. That's maybe simplistic, but maybe not. And now all of a sudden, here we are watching this one of these families deal with that. I think that's one part of it. I think the other part of it is like, there's a devil on all of our shoulders. And sometimes we want to walk into a room and be like, fuck off, dude. Just fuck off. And when we watch Succession, the devil is the one that's doing all the talking. And that's kind of juicy and kind of fun. And because sometimes you're like walking around, you're like, you know what? Fuck you. You know why? Because your idea fucking sucks, and you are rude, and you're mean to me, and you know, but we can't because we're growing up, and on Succession, you just let it ride.
Yeah. There's an honesty to that, right? I mean, like part of it is the rare air that they occupy. It's almost like it's such a unique level of power and access and privilege, right? It's like watching people in the space station. I mean, it's such a weird little laboratory, but it's also got the parallel of Logan Roy as Rupert Murdoch, right? And this conservative media empire as a guy who's trying to build something to counter these traditional media empires, starting a very small independent media company. I'm fascinated by the intersections between media and power that this show explores. But then there's also the fun of just watching people who have so much power they can do whatever the fuck they want, right? And a family that can do whatever they want to each other. You play Stewie, who is kind of like the ultimate below the radar character. Like you're that secret sauce that kind of is looming, and I think sometimes people forget about your character, and then Stewie comes storming back in, right, with some really great dialogue, and like it's almost like the perfect accent. It's just enough to like make that meal perfect, and then it's gone. And I want to ask you something specific. Is Stewie the secret the secret name that will be ultimately the last person standing who will take over Waystar? Is Stewie going to be CEO in the end of this?
Well, he should be. No, I'm kidding. Well, I mean, in a way, no, I don't think. I have no idea who's and I'm probably sure the only person that knows is Jesse. To me, I really take what you said really to heart because I think it's true. You just need a teaspoon of him to come in, give you a little medicine, and come in. And the other thing about Stewie is, in my opinion, he is the most honest character on the show. He'll tell you as is. He says, "Can you trust me?" No. No, about money stuff. No, definitely not. No way. Like worse. But and also he's after the bottom dollar. He's really after just that final coin. And so in a way, I think him coming in and kind of like telling everyone that they're morons and idiots and then leaving again is kind of like, in a way, he represents slightly the audience in that respect. Because in a way, he also doesn't give a shit about the family dynamics. What does he give a fuck about your family shit? It's like you keep talking about your family. It's like, in the last episode of season 2, they fly out with, to Croatia or wherever. I'm in Greece, I guess. I mean, we were actually shooting in Croatia, but in Greece, and they come and I'm eating octopi, and they come in, and then at one point he goes, "Okay, here's the deal." Logan goes, "Here's the deal: 3 board seats, including Kendall's." And if you look, the writer, and again, maybe it was written, but I immediately, because Kendall's my old buddy, that's the other thing about Stewie that's really unique. No one knows Kendall as well as him just because they did college shit together and did high school shit together at Buckley. And so he looks at him when he says that, and then he's like, "You gave up your fucking board seat?" With just one look, I'm like, "You gave up your fucking board seat? Are you an idiot? Why are you dealing with this?" And then the answer is obviously no. And so in a way, Stewie's kind of like fun that way. And Stewie's also like, he's that devil on all of our shoulders. It's like, you know what? Let's just go party for a second.
Can I ask you though? Is Stewie is also, I feel, intentionally ambiguous in everything. Like, what is his background? What is his deal? What is he thinking? What's he going to do? I had to look up that Stewie's character's name is Stewie Hussein, I didn't know that, right? Because
Yeah.
even Stewie is kind of maybe intentionally ethnically ambiguous. And I wonder if Stewie is also kind of a blank slate that's all of us and none of us at the same time. It's this amorphous character, almost like, when Benetton tries to pick a character that's like perfectly the mix of all races in one person,
or whatever.
right? Is Stewie? Can you talk about playing a character like that and how you approach it? And then I also want to talk about characters you've approached in the past and how you're redefining so much of this space and these types of roles. But how do you look at Stewie? How do you define Stewie? Right? Like, I didn't know his last name was Hussein. Do you think most people know that?
I think Iranians know that. I think actually no. I think it's 50-50. I think 50-50. His last name is Stewie Husseini. I talked to Jesse about this. I advocated that we make him an Iranian last name. There are so many Iranians that have so much money. And they are besides hedge money, they run eBay and they run Uber and all that. So that was one part of it. Jesse and I had a conversation on set one day about like, what are the options of how he is Iranian? When did he get here? And there's basically like 4 or 5 different times. His family came in the 50s, they came in the 70s, they came in the 80s or whatever. And we discussed that a little bit. And then he kind of asked me, he's like, which version do you like of this? And I kind of pitched him what I said. And after that, we said that, I said, but I don't want to talk about any of this. I think people need to realize, and when they eventually do, that he's Iranian, that they'll be like, holy shit, he's Iranian. Instead of putting this hat on of like, I already have all of these preconceived notions of what it means to be Iranian off of 30 or 40 years of bullshit, media representation. Do you know what I mean? That's been going on. Like, I that's a battle that we don't need to do right now. So in a way, I always say that Iranians are always like, well, how did he get the name Stewie? And I was like, well, how did Muhammad become Mike? His name was Saddam. And then they changed it to, he's in middle school. He's like, I'm Stewie now. You know what I mean? He saw Family Guy and he's like, I'm Stewie. Or whatever.
That's it.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's it.
So,
and you're also, Arian, I think it's important. This is part of another reason why I think you are so important. You have had an influence dramatically, it sounds like, on how this character has been drawn, communicated, how he evolves. And it sounds like from my, our friendship and my understanding of your work, you've been having those struggles throughout your whole career. And is this a time where you feel like you're winning those arguments, where earlier in your career you were typecast or you had to, you had less power, and now you're on the other side of this and you can determine how one of the most pivotal characters on the biggest show in the world is understood?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that it's completely changed now, but that's not the truth. I think back in the day, when people wanted me to do terrorist roles, or like, he's a terrorist but with a heart of gold. I've heard that a lot. Like, he's a terrorist but he's a good guy. Essentially, when all that happens is, I have to get into those rooms and kind of like look at them and be like, listen, there's 1.7 billion Muslims. Like, you are talking about 0.0001% of them. You know what I mean? And now all of a sudden you're blasting us as if we are the 1.7 billion. And I cannot say, that's why I didn't fucking work, Paul. It's just, I didn't fucking work. It's just because there was nothing out there for me. And my skill set was different as well. You know what I mean? Like, I always thought I would do comedies. You know what I mean? I always thought I was doing sitcoms. You know what I mean? Just because that's what I grew up with, really. And so, and I didn't get those either. And so in a way, those battles were really kind of hard. And also, I just want, maybe people that have been marginalized or have been otherized can understand this. But for others that don't, it's hard to sometimes advocate for yourself and your people inside of a room with 15 fucking executives. It's not easy. It's not like an easy task, because we're also dealing with like, he seems difficult. He seems like it's going to be a lot of difficult stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even trying to, and we're all, maybe it's also my culture, but I'm also trying not to like stir the fucking pot every single time, but I'm also trying to like stand up for what's right. And so in the early days, you get a lot of like, whatever, pass. You pass? Are you passing? Fine, pass. Then go away. We'll get someone else to do it. Nowadays, it's like they want to talk about it, which is nice. Jesse's a rare beast. Jesse wants to like, he's so empathetic. But like on other shows, like they want to talk about it, but they also have to do the work. Like I go back to the military community. The military community has, and I've heard this a lot from veterans, that there's a trust divide that they have with civilians sometimes, because you come into you helicopter in, do a thing, and then you leave as if like you've just like checked a box. And I completely fucking understand that. As a Middle Eastern man that's done many plays, I've seen companies come in, do a Middle Eastern play, and be like, okay, all those relationships, goodbye. What's tricky about that is, and how we can fix that is, and how people in our industry can fix that is, meet with us. There was a project that they, not even a long time, like a year and a half ago, that they wanted me to do, and I kind of passed. I thought it was kind of like not the right project, and I thought it wasn't very Iranian to be. And instead of talking to me and being like, yo, what's it like being Iranian and American? Like, tell me some stuff. Or let's go to a community and talk to those guys for a day. Let's like meet some relationships. What happens is they're like, fine, I'll rewrite it. And then all of a sudden they rewrite it. And then all of a sudden, like it goes from, he's a shithead to like a saint. And it's like, I'm not a fucking saint either, man. Mm-hmm. And then they go like, well, what do you want? It's like, talk to me.
Yeah. Or even a step further is you write it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And rather than having someone write about you, empower, exactly. you and you're doing this. This is why I think Waterwell and so many things you're doing is so important, is rather than having someone write on your behalf, right, which is even more patronizing in some ways, right, and maybe even more insulting. You're writing shit. You're doing shit. Your projects are coming, and I think a lot more of them, I hope, are going to be greenlit because they have so much power. And because they're also damn good, right? Like you're a fantastically talented actor, and I want to maybe I could talk about Succession all day long, but I guess that's Kara Swisher's job now. But I guess all of these pieces, take me back too, because when I think maybe the first time I learned about you was the Tony nomination. Right, and you were nominated for Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo with Robin Williams. And so that was, at least from my view, like such an important moment in your career. Yeah. You probably should have won the Tony.
John Benjamin Hickey, if you're watching this, fuck you, man.
Yeah. We could do a poll online. But can you reflect on that too? Because especially for we talk about national security, we talk about foreign policy, we've talked a lot about the Middle East and what's unfolding. When you look back on that play and that role, and Robin Williams, right? Like Robin Williams was a guy that was so interconnected as a USO performer with mental health issues. I look back on that as so important. And there were so many works that were adjacent to Iraq and Afghanistan that were before their time. And I put that in that category.
Yeah.
I did a play 100%. Called the Sandstorm. We did, other performances, plays, documentaries. I felt like all of them were like 10 to 15 years ahead of the time. And maybe they're even, I almost wish we could bring them back now and say, okay, now let's look at it again, right? But what's your view on that now with time and space, Arian?
Well, I mean, all these unbelievable, translators that in Afghanistan and Iraq that have, many of that have gotten over and gone to safety, but many that haven't. The play Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo, one of the main characters, Musa, was an Iraqi translator that was shat on by Saddam's people and shat on by military folks, and now all of a sudden he's like survived, and that was written in 2009 and performed on Broadway in 2011, and that's the play that is about today. That's Rajiv Joseph's master work, and that play also gave us enough. Robin decided he wanted to do a Broadway play, and he's like, he wanted to do a play, and the reason why he picked Bengal Tiger, as he would tell us all the time, is because he wanted to give something back to the U.S. soldiers and Marines and all the guys that are out there. And so to me, and I'll give you one more story about this and how powerful this play was. one night there was a bunch of Iraqi translators that were in the audience. And so, you know, you're making sure that the Iraqi Arabic is like on point, and you're looking at the
Mm-hmm.
things, and then you're on Broadway. And so, and then afterwards you come out and you meet them all, and there's tears in their eyes and there's tears in my eyes, and we're hugging and holding each other and trying to like feel love and all that. And then all of a sudden one of them says, "Thank you for telling our story," which is really powerful. It was also the same time as Fleet Week. So the next night we're outside doing signatures, and these two handsome white suited men out there, program in hand, and they say, "Thank you for telling our story." And so those are the types of pieces of art that I want to be involved with. And Robin knew that. Robin was a saint. You know, I always tell this story, but sometimes, you know, to after the show would happen, you'd like meet your family and friends. They could come back. It's at the Richard Rodgers, and Hamilton does this now too. Like you get your name on a list, and then you come, you know, on the stage, and you can meet everyone there before you go and sign any autographs. And I can't tell you how many times, maybe 5 or 6 times, where there would be somebody that looked completely lost and did not feel like, you know, a Middle Eastern friend, or didn't feel like a theater friend. You're like, who is this person?
Right.
You know, one guy was this amazing black dude with like a, you know, like a mohawk and, you know, tons of earrings. I was like, who is this? And you're like, "Hey, are you looking for someone?" He's like, "I'm here for Robin." I was like, "Oh," he goes, "He's my sponsor."
Wow.
And I'd be like, that's the type of individual that I want to be in life as a human. Robin, I'm talking about, like, that's the type of person he was. And yeah, his work with the USO was tremendous. And I am such a small, really small, small little, but I'm trying to take that mantle. And even though he didn't ask me, nor did anyone else, but I'm trying to like slowly try to like bring that into our lives, because it's important to me that as Americans that we support the people that, you know, are trying to change the world on the ground, many of which are poor and are looking for trying to get to college. And, you know, I and again, remember, I didn't say this in this interview, but my brother, Moayed, who's a doctor down in DC right now, fought in the Iran-Iraq war for 2 years. So I have a veteran in my family, you know, different world, different time, different means, but so what?
You know, you are powerfully carrying that forward, and so much of it forward. And I think this is such an important time for your voice and leadership, and I'm really grateful for it. And, you know, relevant to all of this, you and I have been talking, you know, offline personally about what's going on with the Afghanistan situation, the debacle, and the Afghan translators. Just, you know, your voice is so important now, in part because you channel the voices of so many who can't be on HBO or, you know, talking on network television. What's your take on Afghanistan, and what do you want folks to think about and consider in this moment?
I mean, it's so simplistic what I'm about to say, but they're just people trying to put food on the table and a roof over the house of I mean, it's and society for probably 70 years, maybe not that long, 60 years, has been meddling in that world, because they are at this crossroads. The land where Cain and Abel are supposedly buried is exactly what's happening right now. People come in, they fuck it up, and then they leave. That goes from Russia to the Taliban to whatever this new ISIS, whatever these guys are, to America, to all of our Western powers. And really, they are people that are kind and considerate and loving and want to just live normally. You know, I would be following so many people that would have like restaurants in Kabul. You know what I mean? And watch them just open up their stores or do a commercial. And for me, those are the stories and the people that I care about. I think about those translators a shit ton, because they really hated the fucking Taliban prior to all this. They don't fucking want them there. They have nothing to do with these fucking folks. And also, they're not even Afghan. 90% of them aren't even fucking Afghan. People don't even know that. And so I think about them saying, finally, when, you know, the war started, at the hope of it, of like, get rid of these fucking criminals. Yes, I will help you. Yes, I will come and help translate. And yes, I will do that. And then all of a sudden now, years later, to be like, oh fuck, they're back, and now all of a sudden the Taliban has a little. It's, you know, it's a scary comparison what I'm about to make, and maybe I shouldn't even make it. But Kendall, you know, at the end of the Volter episode, does something that really fucking scared me, which is in season 2, episode 2 or whatever. He's like, you know, before he like gets rid of him, he's like, send me all your best ideas and let's try to get, you know, Volter, you know, this company back up and running. So he gets all the ideas, and then he goes, here's all the ideas and here are the people, and then you can fire all these people and cut them off. And so
them, yep.
And kills them.
Yeah.
And it's not the same, but the Taliban right now is like, oh, you helped the Americans? I have your fucking number. I know where you live. Trust me. And what are they doing right now? They're like walking up and down their streets, waiting for a misstep, you know?
That is such a powerful, relevant breakdown, because a couple of episodes ago, we asked Bradley Whitford to compare, you know, Handmaid's Tale and Gilead to the Taliban in Afghanistan. But this one is almost in a really powerful way, even more simple, right? A person like Kendall with tremendous power, destroying opposition, destroying ideas, like manipulating and mismanaging power, which is what we know is happening in Afghanistan with the Taliban. And just like Kendall and anyone else, you can't trust the fucking Taliban, right?
No,
but people in Washington want to rush to that. And I'm so glad, Arian, that you're...
extreme power. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
But extreme power is not right. Do you know what I mean? It's just not right thing.
There's also you're such. I continue to want to bring on the show people who are iconic, important, inspiring Americans, and you are that in part because of your example, because of who you are. And you didn't come from Afghanistan; you came from a different country. But there are 5-year-old kids like you landing in cities all around this country, and either they will be welcomed, or they will be, many of them, frankly, will be left to die, or left to suffer, or left to try to start a rebellion. And then the ones that get here are still not getting enough support from our government, many people are stepping up. But I think people still, all the stereotypes you've been breaking and fighting for so long are still so relevant and being manipulated by evil forces right now against these kids, right? That you need to be afraid of these kids, that they shouldn't be here, that they're not welcome, that they're dangerous, when in fact, they might win a Tony one day, right? They might be nominated for a Tony one day. They might win an Oscar one day. They might build a great business one day. They are the greatest a proof of concept for what America is supposed to be. So I'm so glad.
I so agree with you on that. And that's why, in a way, America, to us that have the opportunity to even talk to you, you know, the miracle that I'm even talking to you, are so grateful for this country and so proud to be an American. And so we want it to always be a better country. You know, a person, like, let's take a Syrian refugee for right now, a Syrian refugee with a family, a father and a mother and 2 kids, will then run away from Syria, walk hundreds of miles to get to the Mediterranean Ocean, illegally get on a boat that would, in the middle of the night, with the chances of the boat popping, with sharks eating, I don't even know what the craziness that entails in that, getting onto land in, let's say, Greece, getting into a refugee camp, going through the Refugee Corps program, getting to the United States. Those are the people we want.
Yep.
Those people can fucking do anything. They can do your fucking anything. They can do your, you know, they can clean. They can also fucking run a fucking business. We should give them all the resources immediately, because they will make the world work. You know what I mean? They're going to be hungry and smart, you know? And I think what's happened is that the conversation from evil powers and again, extreme powers, those conversations have turned into, freeloaders trying to grab our stuff, trying to, it's like, what are you,
So
like, it's the complete opposite.
it is. I think I'm so glad to have your voice in this time, the rollout of the new season of Succession, where you're going to get a platform to talk about all these things, which I think is so important. You're one of those guys I'm so grateful is in the activism space. I hope you run for office one day.
Oh, you're crazy.
And when we look at you, you're that proof of concept for the American dream. And you might even be a 5-year-old kid who comes here who might end up, I don't know, maybe in a SpiderMan movie. So like this is my little Easter egg. I wore a shirt today that my mother got me. For folks watching on video, I have this awesome, my mother got this for me for Christmas because I'm such a huge comic book fan and a Spider-Man. And it's just a really cool Spider-Man shirt. But I wore it because I have to ask you, and this is going to be a tough. So what's up, man? Are you going to be the great American success story that ends up in a Spider-Man movie?
Well, that's hilarious, and because the trailer is out, I can at least say yes. I am super honored. I mean, honestly, super thrilled and honored to be in the universe. Yeah, I think on December 17th, if you happen to see this little indie called Spider-Man No Way Home, you could potentially see, Arian Moayed up there on the big screen, maybe even like bigger than I would like, because there might be some close-ups, but yeah, I gotta say it's a universe and a world that I can't believe I'm fucking in, but I cannot wait to unveil what is to come. Spider-Man, this movie is going to blow your mind.
I can't wait. And we've been talking in shows about this super friends network of the maybe righteous media, independent Americans, superhero movie I want to do one day with everybody that's been on this show, from like Wes Chatham to Ron Perlman to, we had Milo on, we've had Jeffrey Wright, the new Batman's coming up, right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
everything else.
That looks good.
And adding you to this, man, the bench just keeps getting deeper. The team keeps getting stronger. So I don't know, anybody out there wants to do a kick-ass movie with everyone who's been on this show, and we can mix in a little Sarah Jessica Parker and Susan Rice and lots of really cool cameos, right? Over 100 episodes of this show.
Oh yeah, let's get this going right now.
I think you have to write it. You have to write it. You have to direct it. You have to write it. You have to direct it. That has to happen, man.
I love that, and I would fucking love to see that movie. Actually.
All right. Well, we'll put that in the parking lot.
On the list.
We'll come back to it. I hope you can stick around afterward, and our Patreon members will get a little extra content with you. I want to go deeper on your favorite drink, your first car.
Yes.
But as we wrap up, I'm proud of you, and I'm grateful for your leadership and your patriotism. You are redefining patriotism in this country. Let me just ask you one last question, Arian. If a 5-year-old kid who just got here is listening to this, or anybody going through hard times right now, I'm going through hard times. Everybody's going through hard times in their own way right now. You're kicking ass, and I can't imagine how difficult it was to get to this point. But what's your message for that man or woman, boy or girl who's listening right now?
That we're here for you. That's a line from Succession. We here for you. We here for you. But this was not supposed to be funny. But we are actually here for you. We care about you, and you can do it. I think a big thing is, growing up, I didn't have any like Iranian in media to look up to. There was nobody to be like, oh, I want to be like that person. And so part of the struggle is fighting the idea that it would never happen because there's no one like me. And so I want people to know that you can fucking do this. And if that 5-year-old Afghan boy or Iranian boy that comes here with very little means and very little, prospects, that, as hard as this country is going through a reckoning right now is, I think that this is a place that you can make this shit happen. You have the resources and the people, and if you are out there, and I say this to everyone, find me. I will talk to you. I will have a community of people who talk to you. You know,
you are very generous, sincere in that, and you know, maybe you could run for mayor of New York City. So I'm going to push.
You're an insane man right now.
Well, you know what? You've done some insane shit, and you could do it, man. You know. So I hope that Arian for mayor is something I support. Stewie for CEO is something that I support. I think it's a sleeper pick.
I support that too.
It's a sleeper pick. If you've got a fantasy, you know, if there's a Succession fantasy football pool, my money is like, and if it's not, it should be. Like, I think that's a great storyline that nobody's talking about. Because everybody's looking at the pieces. Here's the thing. Everybody's looking at the pieces on the board. People aren't looking at the pieces off the board. And Stewie's a piece that's off the board. And Stewie's out there, and I'm watching, and you can't tell me shit. I know that. You had to sign 100,000 NDAs for this and SpiderMan and everything else. But I'm rooting for it, man. And I am rooting for you always.
I just want to say that one thing I will say is about Stewie is that, I'm not giving anything away, is that it always feels like Logan wanted Stewie as the son.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Jesse, if you're listening to this, I'm pitching that I once, where's Rachel?
Or at least a spinoff, right? Like this universe, this Succession universe could be bigger than the Marvel universe. So I'm all about all the spinoffs that are to come for the next 20 years. I mean, this show is huge and important and just awesome. And I'm grateful for your role in it and your voice, for joining me on the show, for your leadership, for your friendship. I'm so excited for everything happening in your life, and I hope that this brings you to more people that are going to join your fan club and are going to be behind you because you're the best. You have been so
generous. It's like so humbling. But I want to just say, so it's said clear and out there, like you're the example that we're trying to go after, Paul. Like you are the type of person that we all should be going after. So I appreciate all this praise, but man, I look up to you in a way that you probably don't even recognize.
Well, there are plenty of people coming after me, but not in that way. It feels like the Succession way sometimes. But we're all in one team, man. And I'm glad to have you on my team and to be on this team, Team America, the new manifestation of what Team America is supposed to be. You're the quarterback, man, and I'll take the handoff from you anytime. Thank you, my friend, for all you do.
Paul. Thank you,
for joining.
Thank you.
And stay vigilant.
Thanks, man. You too.